All right. Hi. Also reading Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 217, Railroad Operating Rules. 217 Purpose. 217.2 Perfective Effort. Application Definitions Penalty. Operating Rules Filing Record and Keeping Program Operational Testing Inspection Record Keeping Program Instruction Operating Rules Record Keeping Electronic Record Keeping. 217 Information Collection Appendix A to Part 17 Schedule of Civil Penalties. Authority Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 20103, 20107, 28 U.S. Standard Code 2461, Note 49, CFR 1.49. Alright, some source of 39 Federal Registration 41176, November 25th, 1974, unless otherwise noted. All right, subpart A, general. Through the requirements of this part, the Federal Railroad Administration learns the condition of operating, the rules, practices, respect trains, and other rolling equipment of the railroad industry. Each of the railroad is required to instruct the employees in operating procedures or operating practices. 217 preemptive effect. Normal state negligence standards apply to there is no federal action covering the subject matter under the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 20106. Subject 20106, issuance of the regulation of the part of the preempts any state law regulation other than covering the same subject matter, except for the additional more stringent law regulation order than necessary to eliminate the reduced essentially local railroad safety and regular security hazards. There is not an incompatibility law regulation order of the United States government, and that does not unreasonably burden its interstate commercial commerce. In Section 20106 permits state tort actions arising in the event of the activities occurring after the January 18th, 2002. The following violation of the federal standard of the care established with the regulation or order issued with the Secretary of Transportation with respect to railroad safety, and such as the regulation of the Secretary of the Homeland Security with respect to railroad security of parties violation or a failure to comply with its own plan or rule standard created with the pursuant to the regulation and order issued either by two secretaries and the party violation of the state and the standard that is necessary to eliminate the reduced and essential local safety, or the secretary hazard for the not incompatible with the law, regulation, order of the United States government, and does not unreasonably burden its interstate commerce. Nothing is in Section 20106 creates federal cause of the action to become on the behalf of an injured party, confirms with the federal question of the jurisdiction of state law causes of action. 217.3. The application, except for this provided with the paragraph B of this section, this part applies to the railroad that operates the trains and other rolling equipment on the standard gauge track, which is part of the general railroad system of transportation. This part does not apply to 1. The railroad that operates only on the track inside the installation, which is not a part of the general railroad system of transportation, or 2. The rapid transportation operation in the urban area that is not connected with the general railroad system of the transportation. Statute 217.4 definitions as in used in this part Associated Administrator of Safety means the Associated Administrator of Safety of the Federal Railroad Administration or the person delegated as designated with the writing. Class 1, 2, and 3 have the meaning of the sign, but the Regulation Interstate Commerce Commission, Title 49 CFR Part 1201, General Instruction 1.1, as those regulations may be revised, applied with the coordinate order of the Commission, included the modification class threshold being based on revenue deflator or adjustments. Division headquarters means the location designated by the railroad, whereas a higher level operating manager, a EGA, superintendent, division manager, or equivalent with jurisdiction over the portion of the railroad has an office. The FRA means the Federal Railroad Administration. Qualified means that the person has successfully completed all the instruction, training, examination programs required by the railroad. This part of the known as the person thereof, and has actual knowledge and may be responsible, reasonably expected for the knowledge of the subject of the person expected to be competent. System headquarters means in location designated by the railroad as in the general office of the railroad system. 217.5 penalty. Any person in any type of the covered under the Title 1 U.S. Standard Code 1, including but not limited to the following: railroad manager, supervisor, official, other employee or agent of the railroad, any other manufacturer, leaser, or lesser of the application equipment of the lessor or leaser of the railroad equipment, tractor facilities, independent contractor providing with the goods and services of the railroad, and employee of such owner, the manufacturer, lessor, leaser, or lessor independent of the contractor who violates the requirement of the part of the cause of the violation requirement and subject to civil penalty at least the 650 or not more than $25,000 per violation, except for the penalties may be assessed against individuals only for the willful violations where grossly negligent violation, partially repeated violations has created with an imminent hazard of death or injury to the person has caused the death of injury. A penalty not exceeding $105,000 personal violation may be assessed. Each of the day of the violation such shall constitute a separate offense. See Appendix A to the part of the statement of the agency civil penalty policy. 217.7 Operating rules filing and record keeping on before December 21st, 1940. On and before December 21st, 1994, each of the Class 1, Class 2 Railroad and National Railroad Passenger Corporation, each of the railroad providing with a commuter service in the metropolitan suburban area that is in operation November the 21st, 1994, shall file with the Federal Railroad Administration, Washington, D.C. 20590. One copy of this go to the operation rules, timetables, special instructions which were in effect with the number November 21st, 1994, each of the Class 1, each Class 2 railroad, each of the railroad providing with a commuter service in the metropolitan and suburban area of the commencing operation after November 21st, 1994, shall file the administrator one copy of its code of the operating rules, timetable, special instruction before the commencing operations. Alright, after November 21st, 1994, each of the Class 1 railroads, each of the Class 2 railroads, National Railroad Passenger Corporation, and each of the railroad provided with a commuter service in the metropolitan and suburban area shall file with each of the new amendment to its code operating with the rules, new timetable, each of the new timetable special instruction with the Federal Railroad Administration within 30 days after they issued. On and after November 21st, 1994, each of the Class 3 railroads, any other railroad subject to this part but not subject to the paragraphs A and B of this section, shall be kept in one copy and the current code of the operating rules, timetable, special instruction, one copy of the subsequent amendment to its code of the operating rules, each new timetable, each of the new timetable special instructions at each of the system headquarters shall make such records available to the representative of the Federal Railroad Administration for the inspection, copying during normal business hours. 217.9 Code for Federal Regulations 49 Title 49 Program the operational testing and inspection record keeping requirement to conduct the operational testing and inspection. Each of the railroad which in the part applies with the shall periodically conduct operational tests and inspections to determine the extent of the compliance within this code operation rules, timetable, specialties, instructions specifically included testing and inspection sufficient to verify the compliance with the requirements of the subpart F and part 218 of this chapter in accordance with the written and program as required in the paragraph C of this section. B. The railroad and railroad testing officer responsible for the requirements of the paragraph B of the applicable beginning with the January 1st, 2009. Each of the railroad officers who conduct operational tests and inspections, railroad testing officers shall be qualified in railroad operating rules in accordance with Statute 217.11 of this part, be qualified in an operational testing inspection program, the requirements procedures relevant to the testing inspection of the officer is conducted. 3. The receiving the appropriate field training is necessary to achieve the proficiency of each of the operational testing and the inspection that an officer is authorized to conduct. And conducting operational testing and inspection in accordance with the railroad program operational testing inspection written record of the documentation qualification each of the railroad testing officers shall retain at the railroad system headquarters at the division headquarters for each of the division where the officer assigned shall be made available to the representative of the Federal Railroad Administration for inspection, copying during the normal business hours. Written and program operational testing inspection. Every railroad shall have a written program operational testing inspection in effect. New railroad shall have such a program within 30 days of commencing railroad operations. The program shall provide operational testing inspection under the various operation conditions of the railroad. As January 1st, 2009, the program should be address the particular emphasis like operating that causes are likely to cause most accidents incidents, such as those accidents incidents identified with quarterly reviews, 6-month reviews, and the annual summaries as required under the paragraph A, E through F of this section as applicable. 2. They require a minimum number of the test inspection per year covering the requirements of Part 218, Subpart F of this chapter. Describe each of the operational testing inspection required, including this means and procedure used to carry it out. Stated the purpose of each of the type of the operational testing inspection. 5. Stated according to the divisions with the applicable frequency within each type of the operational testing inspection is to be conducted. 6. As January 1st, 2009, identifying the officer made by the name, job title, and division and system who shall be responsible for the ensuring that the program and operational testing and inspection is properly implemented, with the responsibility of the officer shall include, but not limited to, ensuring that the railroad testing officers are direct with their efforts in an appropriate manner to reduce accidents and incidents, and that they are required to review summaries and completed with the railroad division shall identify at least one of the officer of the system headquarters with responsible for overseeing the entire program and implementation by each of the division, including the schedule, making the program fully operative within 210 days after it begins. Records. Each railroad to which the party shall keep the record of the date and time, the place, with the result of each operational testing inspection was performed in accordance with the program. Each of the court records shall specify with the other officers administrating the testing inspection. Each of the employee tested the records shall be retained at the system headquarters. Each division headquarters with the test and inspection are conducted for the one calendar year after the end of the calendar year is which they relate. These records shall be available to the representative of the FRA in the inspection during the copy of the normal business hours. Each railroad shall retain one of the copy of the current program for the periodic performance of the operation of the testing inspection required by paragraph A of this section. One copy of the subsequent amendment to such a program. These records shall be retained at the system headquarters and at each division headquarters where the testing inspections are conducted within 3 calendar years after the end of the calendar year to which they relate. These records shall be available for the representatives of the FRA for the inspection copying during the normal business hours. Adjustments for the program of operational testing. The paragraph E of the shall apply within each of the Class 1 National Railroad Passenger Corporation being in April 1st, 2009 to all other railroads subject to the paragraph beginning with July 1st, 2009. Reviews of the railroad, other passenger railroads, each of the railroad to which this part applies shall conduct with a periodic review analysis as provided with the paragraph shall retain at each of the division headquarters where the applicable in the system headquarters one copy of the following written reviews periodically. However, the requirement does not apply to either the railroad with unless 400,000 total employee worker hours annually or a passenger railroad subject to the paragraph E2. 1. Quarterly review. The designation officer, or even the division of the headquarters of the system headquarters, if no division headquarters exists, shall conduct a written quarterly review of the accident incident related to the resist of the prior operational testing inspection, other printed and safety data for the division system, and identifying with the relevant operating rules related to the accident incident that occurred during the quarter. The review should also include the name of each of the railroad testing officers, the name of the test inspection conducted by each of the officers, whether the officer is conducted with a minimum number of each of the type of the test inspection required by the railroad's program based upon the result of the review. The designated officer shall make an unnecessary adjustment. Testing inspection required for the railroad officer subsequent to the period quarterly reviews and adjustment shall be completed no later than 30 days after the quarter has ended. The 6-month review, the designated with each of the system headquarters responsible for the deployment and administration of the program operational testing inspection shall conduct the review of the program operational testing inspection on a 6-month basis to ensure that it is being utilized and intended that a quarterly review provided for the paragraph has been properly completed and the appropriate adjustments have been made to distributing the testing and inspection required. That the railroad testing officers are appropriate and with directing their efforts. The 6th month of the review shall be completed no later than 60 days after the review of this has period ended. 2 reviews of passenger railroads, not less than one every 6 months. The designated officer for the National Railroad Corporation, National Passenger Corporation of each of the railroad providing with the commuter system service in the metropolitan and suburban areas shall conduct a periodic reviews and analysis provided within the paragraph. That shall retain each of the division headquarters and where the applicable at the system headquarters one of the copy of the reviews. Each of these such reviews shall be completed within 30 days of the closure of the period. The designated officer shall conduct a written review of the operational testing and an inspection data for each of the division, if and any of the system, determining the compliance with the railroad testing officers with its program operational testing inspection required at the paragraph AC of this section. At a minimum, this review shall include the name of each of the railroad testing officers, the number of the test inspection conducted with each of the officer, whether the officer conducted the minimum number of each type of the test inspection required for the railroad program. Accident incident data that results from prior operational testing and inspection other than pertinent and safety data on each division. If any other safety system is identifying the relevant operating rules related to those accidents incidents that occurred during the period. Based on the results of the review, the designated officer shall make the necessary adjustments to the testing and inspection required for the railroad officers with subsequent periods. And 3, implementation of the program operational testing inspection for the system perspective to ensure that it is being utilized intended by the other reviews provided for the paragraph that having properly completed with the appropriate adjustment have been made up of the distribution testing inspections required for the railroad testing of officers appropriately direction for their efforts with record retention. Records retention. The records of the periodic reviews required for the paragraph E1, E2 of this section shall have the retained period of 1 year after the end of the calendar year to the related that shall be made available for the representative of the FRA for inspection. And copying during normal business hour. F. Annual summary of operational test and inspection before March 1st of each of the calendar year, each of the railroad to which this part applies, except for the railroad with less than 400,000 total employees, workers annually shall retain at each of the division headquarters at the system of the headquarters of the railroad 1 copy of the written summary for the following of the respects to the previous calendar year activities of the number and type of the result of each of the operational testing and inspection stated in accordance with the operation division where they applicable with the conducted with the required paragraphs A through and C of this section. The report record shall be retained for 3 calendar years after the end of the calendar year this to which they relate to. They should be made available to the representative of the FRA for the inspection copying during the normal business hours. G. The electronic record keeping. Each railroad to which the part of the applies is authorized to retain the electronic record keeping of the information prescribed. This section provided that all of the following conditions are met. The railroad adequately limits the control of accessibility to such and information retained in an electronic database identifies those individuals who have such access. The railroad has a terminal at the system headquarters at each of the division headquarters. Each of the such terminal has a computer, monitor, central processing unit, keyboard, either of the facility machine, printer connected with the computer to retrieve the product information in usable format to immediate review by the FRA representative. The railroad has designated with the representative who is authorized to authenticate retrieve information from the electronic system and are true and accurate copies of the electronic kept of the records. The railroad provides the representative of the FRA with immediate access to these records and inspection copying during the normal business hours and provides printouts for such records upon request. H. Upon review of the program operational testing and inspection required for the section, the associated administrator of the safety may form the cause state of the disapprove of the program notification and such that the disapproval shall be made in writing as specifying the basis of the disapproval decision. If the associated administrator for the safety disapproves of the program, the railroad has 35 days from the date of the written notification of such disapproval. Amendment and its program submitted to the associated administrator for the safety for approval. Provide a written response for the support of the program for the associated administrator of safety who informs the railroad of the FRA final decision in writing and failure to submit the program for the necessary revisions to the associated administrator of safety in accordance with the paragraph will be considered with a failure to implement a program under this part. 217.11. Program instruction, operational rules, record keeping, electronic record keeping to ensure that each of the railroad employees who activates and governed by the railroad operating rules and under the standard of those rules, each of the railroad has the part of apply shall periodically instruct each of such employee on the meeting the application of the railroad operating rules in accordance with the written program retained at the system headquarters at the division headquarters for each of the division where the employee is instructed. On the other half, on or after November 21st, 1994, 30 days after being commenced of the operation, which is later each of the railroad, which is part of the shall retain the copy of the current program for the periodic instruction of its employees required of the paragraph A of this section, and 1 copy of each of the subsequent amendments to the program. The system headquarters of the railroad shall retain 1 copy of these records. The division headquarters for each division where the employees are instructed shall retain 1 copy of all the portions of these records. The division applies and enforces that the record shall be made available to the representative of the Federal Railroad Administration for the inspection copy during the normal business hours. This program shall describe the means and proceeding for the use of the instruction for the various classes of the affected employees, state the frequency and instruction based determination for the frequency, include a schedule completing with the initial instruction of the employees who are already employed when the program begins begin within 30 days of the November 21st, 1994, the date of the commencing operation, which is later provided initial instruction for each employee hired after the program begins. Each of the railroad to which they part applies to authorized to retain the electronic record keeping its program periodic instruction of the employees on operating rules provided in the regular requirements stated in 217.9 G1 through 5 of this part are satisfied. Alright, 217.13. Information collection. The information collection requirements of the part had been reviewed on the Office of Management and Budget pursuant to the Paperwork Reduction Act of 1980, Public Law 96.511, and has been assigned by the OB Office of Budget Management Control number 2130-0035. Information collection requirements are found in the following sections: Section 217.7, 217.9, and 217.11. And these are the appendix, part 217, scheduled civil penalties, operating rules violation 2500, willful violation of 217.7, operating rules willful violation 5000, operating testing inspection failure to implement program 95,000 12 to 1250 violation 13,000 16,000 willing violation. Operational testing, railroad testing officer's responsibility, failure to provide instruction, examination, field training, failure to conduct testing in accordance with the program, 95,000, 13,000 willingly records, 75,000 to 11,000, record of program and program incomplete, 75,000 to 12,100 to 11,600, 16,000. Records of individual testing and inspection, 75,000, retaining the copy of conduct, quarter review 95,000, 6-month review 95,000, also with 313,000 violation, a willful violation. Records of failure to retain the copy of conduct, record 75,000, 11,000, annual summary 95,000. I'm sorry. This shit's pissing me off. Alright, program of the instruction operating rules 5,000, 75,000 violation instruction program instruction operating rules B 25,000 to 5,000, and that takes care of part 217 railroad operating safety rules. I'm gonna post that on the YouTube. So once again, railroad operating rules 217.